I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Village of Campton Hills. It is June 17th, 2025, 7 o'clock p.m. Roll call, please.
Trustee Benetti?
Here.
Trustee Boatner?
Here.
Trustee Burson?
Here.
Trustee Hassenberger?
Here.
Trustee Millette?
Present.
Trustee Muir?
Here.
President Wojnicki?
Present. Please stand for the pledge, and Kim, will you lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move on to public comments. Tracy?
William Waldron?
Thank you to the board. Thank you, President Nikki. My name is Will Waldron, and I'm here representing the board of the Norton Lake Homeowners Association. Chris Ruback, the Norton Lake HOA president, spoke before this same board in February regarding the Norton Lake punch list that was created. This document outlined over 18 different items, all related to the common areas within the community, which were found to be broken, neglected, incomplete, or left in complete disrepair. This document was submitted to Shodine and Hank Harrison with a village in copy. The total value of our punch list repairs is just under $250,000. This figure was arrived at using actual bids. It is not an approximation. Over the past 4 months, only Hank Harrison's lawyers have been willing to even contact us in hopes of reaching a financial settlement. However, his most recent offer still remains well below expectations. Shodine has refused to engage with their lawyer, although it's clearly evident that Hank and Shodine's lawyers have been in contact behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Test,
Thank you,
test.
Chief.
There we go.
Yeah.
Shodine has made no effort to provide a financial settlement. Shodine has attempted to make some repairs related to items on the punch list. However, they were poorly executed, and the end result is comparable to putting lipstick on a pig. They repaired the sidewalks throughout the community. However, in lieu of actually replacing many severely cracked sections, they chose to patch them, poorly I might add, as it was quicker and cheaper. This typically shoddy work is very representative of how Shodine has gone about things. While these patches will act as a Band-Aid for a couple of years, there are still 15-plus squares which will eventually need to be replaced. They also want to claim that they repaired the area near the lake in Phase 3, which has many previous drainage issues. The HOA board was told several times by Shodine site rep Logan that the area was regraded with a continual 2% slope from Louisa May Elcott to our lake. If this was the case, then after the first rain, the entire area should not have been flooding out. It was beyond evident that the area had significant dips and valleys, which would never allow for a constant flow across it. These areas were documented by Norton Lake resident Frank Scatello in an email to both Mark Rooney and Barbara Ruznicki. Frank also ironically serves on the village's community relations board. Shodine just returned to this previously repaired area on June 12th to add more dirt to the low spots after they claimed the damage was due to a vehicle traffic driving on their previous repair. We all know this is a tacitly false claim. Nobody has driven across those common areas. It was simply a cover to Shodine's prior poor attempt to fix the area. Our HOA president, Chris Ruback, is a civil structural engineer, and he still believes the area is misgraded and feels the same way about the other 20 acres open space here. There is no way that the areas are graded per the engineering plans. If they were, there would not be as many standing water issues as there are today. This is why the most expensive punch list item is repair to the common areas. All these issues were brought to both Mark's and Barbara's attention by Chris during recent phone calls and in-person meetings. The Norton Lake HOA is in shock that we have had to come before the village board yet again to voice our concerns with the state of our community. One would think that one of the largest local builders in the area would have the ability to follow through on the development and leave it in a proper state of completion. It's also a head scratcher given this same builder now wants to build a new 900 home development in LaFox with starting prices just under $1 million. This community is also supposed to have extensive open space areas. Norton Lake's entire punch list is focused on damaged, incomplete open space areas. What do you expect a new community to look like at the end of their build-out? In our eyes, the village board should be a lot more concerned with all this, given their plan to annex LaFox into Campton Hills on June 26. Once this occurs, they will end up overseeing this new community and continue dealing with Shodini for the next 20-plus years as it progresses. As we noted in February, we struggle to comprehend how the village could even consider approving this new community without standing up for its own current residents who have been getting screwed over in the Norton Lake area. The amount that Norton Lake needs to address the issues is beyond pennies, which makes it even more difficult to understand why Shodine refuses to come to the table and just resolve this issue and move on to the new project. Norton Lake refuses to let this issue go, as this affects every one of our residents, and when we are backed into a corner, we'll continue fighting our way out. As we've told several members on this board already, if this is not resolved within the next 2 weeks, we are looking at taking the issue public in a variety of ways. Given the various things that have occurred over the past handful of years out here, I don't think we want to bring further attention to Campton Hills. We want to stress that we do not want to do this, as it would paint our little village in a negative light at the cost of doing so to Shodine. But this is simply the next step in this effort. We also have a large group of members who have been demanding the flood Village Hall and board meetings to voice their displeasure. We've asked them to refrain from this as we try to work this out, but our members' patience is wearing thin. We've already contacted multiple local and area newspapers who have told us they were interested in our story. We discussed setting up signage around the new LaFox community in order to bring up our issues as well. Pictures of our mud-covered, weed-infested open spaces and never-developed prairie areas would surely be of interest to the new future residents, given the community is to be filled with both. Lastly, we've had a resident inform us that they are very close friends of the Major Networks investigative reporting team, and he told us they'd be interested in the story too. Again, this is not our preferred avenue. However, available alternatives continue to dwindle. Norton Lake wants to work with Hank, Shodine, and the village to resolve our issues. This is the same desire we've had since February when all this started. In order to do this, our lawyers have requested a meeting to be set so that the issues can be discussed out in the open in lieu of emails and phone calls. We've been seeking this since the start, but we hope that the village will step up and make this happen. This is especially true when the village is keen on getting the LaFox community going so they can seek the new home revenue stream. For this meeting, it would be our desire to come to a breakdown between the parties for the $250,000 repair bill, which to us makes complete sense for Shodine and Hank to just split it down the middle 50-50. If this occurs and we'll agree to it, release all parties and everyone can move on. We are seeking the assistance of the village to facilitate this meeting and bring this issue to a close. There is still another option though, which in our eyes can be implemented tonight and will close out this issue for everyone. Over the past 4 months of this fight, our HOA president, Chris Ruback, has spoken to many different members of this village board. One of the newest members, Frank Benetti, had a common sense idea that seems to resolve the issue and create a win-win solution for all parties involved. The suggestion would definitely work in the private sector, but he wasn't sure if there would be any issues at the municipal level, but doubted it. He said he ran the idea past Administrator Rooney, but isn't sure where it sits today. If acceptable to the board, this suggestion will allow Norton Lakes residents to correct the problems we have inherited at a reasonable expense. It will allow the village to benefit financially and allow Shodine and Hank to not have to fund the entire repair themselves nor admit fault. His suggestion, if allowed, would not only help our situation, but also potentially generate additional revenue to help with the significant shortfall in the road repair budget the village currently has. With this speech tonight, the village board is now up to date on the current status of the Norton Lake issues. It is our hope that a meeting with all the players can be set this week so we can finally resolve this. If not, we are hopeful that Frank's idea is a feasible alternative. We are really shooting to have a decision prior to the June 26th annexation meeting in order to prevent the meeting from being flooded by angry Norton Lake residents complaining and turning it into a circus. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board this evening, and we eagerly await your response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we'll move on to any other public comments? No? Move on to staff reports. A, police. 1, swearing in a new full-time officer, Kenneth Foote. So Kenneth Foote, please step forward.
And while you do that, so Officer Foote comes to the agency with over 16 years of experience, including training and certification as supervisor, crisis negotiation, traffic reconstructionist, and CIT officer, just to name a few. He's very familiar, actually, with the rich history of the surrounding area because he's had family that was in Wasco prior to the incorporation into Campton Hills, which is very nice. He is married to his beautiful wife, Brittany, who is here with him tonight, and he has chosen to pass on the badge pinning portion of it. So we'll just all have you do the oath to him. But he's a very welcome addition to the department, and then we look forward to his family becoming a part of our family, and I anticipate a lot of good things from him.
I, Kenneth Foote,
I, Kenneth Foote,
do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois
and the ordinances of the Village of Hampton Hills,
and the ordinances of the Village of Hampton Hills,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer according to the best of my ability.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer to the best of my abilities.
Welcome. Congratulations. All right, I'll give this to you. I'll catch him. Okay, moving on, we have April Officer of the Month, Derek Bond, Chief.
So we started this year an Officer of the Month for many different reasons, because all the officers do a great bunch of things. So Officer Bond was actually chosen for the April Officer of the Month. He joined the department back in 2023. He had over 25 years of law enforcement experience, including retiring from Palatine. He's always been a professional and dedicated employee, willing to fill shifts even on short notice. He's well-liked by the community, especially Bell Graham and Wasco schools. A few months back, Officer Bond came to me, presented me some suggestions and new ideas for our department, and sort of a way to build working relationships with both our schools. Officer Bond has spent a lot of time and hard work on updating policies and forms relating to juvenile issues within our schools. The start of this school year, Officer Bond will be working as a part-time school resource officer in both our schools, which the district and Wasco and Bell Graham are super excited about. The department relationship with both our schools, especially our students, is near and dear to my heart. My entire career has been devoted to schools, no matter where I've been. I love it. It's great to see Officer Bond step up, because he was previously an SRO officer for so long in Palatine and have the experience. Has been great. So for that reason, along with many other reasons, some that I've noted, Officer Bond has been chosen as the April Officer of the Month.
Yay. Yeah, congratulations. Everybody leaves. Okay, Chief, monthly report.
All right, I made a slight error, and I forgot to attach the monthly report to your guys' packet, but Tracy was so kind to go ahead and get it uploaded, so it is there on the website, so I didn't waste a bunch of paper printing it out for everyone. 427 calls for service. This is the month of May. 14 accidents, 90 citations, 1 arrest. The calls are at their highest total ever over previous years. So the calls for the first 5 months of 2025 are 1,269. Put that in perspective, in 2025, or 2024, the entire year, a 12-month span, we had 1,299 calls. So already at a 5-month period, it's already higher, and it's for many different reasons. Bell Graham Summer School started this week. It continues through July. The department's monitoring the traffic concerns in Fox Mill, and then obviously the large amount of additional students and staff that are taking a part in it. Again, this isn't for one school. This is the district-wide summer school program, so it's every school in the district. The police department's also been assisting with the Girl Scouts in Northern Illinois with their summer camp program, which started this week at Gray Willows Farm. Last year was the first year the Girl Scouts in Northern Illinois moved from their former location, Leroy Oaks, to Gray Willows. Approximately 300 Girl Scouts are attending the event. We've been assisting with traffic control and making sure everything goes smoothly throughout the day for them. So far, we've had no issues besides a few traffic concerns when it started on Monday. When we ordered the new squad, I wanted to update the design of the squad. A couple of our older ones had an outdated design. It needed to be freshened up. So when I wanted to do this, I put it out to the department, and I said, give me thoughts, give me ideas, who has something. Stavi was actually the one that came forward with a bunch of different ideas. But the car's in the back lot. The car is a completely different design. We wanted something that stood out. People knew it was police. It was very clean looking, and I think it accomplished all that. We have a couple unmarked cars. Serves a purpose, traffic enforcement investigations. But going forward, all the cars are going to follow that design scheme that's out there on the new car. It looks good. It's visible on patrol. Many times we'll get residents say, oh, hey, I had a complaint here. Your car never showed up. Well, actually, they don't realize that the black unmarked Durango that is sitting down the street is one of our cars. So I think it's good to sort of get back to having more cars that are visible to the community for many reasons. But kudos to Stavi because she played a big part in that design, and it came out really nice. We will have a new part-time officer. She's going to start her training in July. She does have previous experience, Amanda. So at some point here, we'll get to welcome her to the department. So she'll fill a role here as a part-time officer to help us. And I think that is it, unless there's any questions.
Okay. Any questions or
Well,
comments?
Chief, maybe you could update them on your work with the police commission and how your list as well as getting to promotions.
Yeah, we've worked on two things, and actually, she just left, so I can't say nothing, but Mary was here. She's
Yeah.
one of our commissioners, so she was here to recognize Ken being sworn in. They play a huge part in it. When we go through this whole process, the police department does the backgrounds, the polygraph, the psych, everything. I don't take part in the interviews. When I became chief, I removed myself from it. I don't want no bias. We have 3 great members of the committee. They do the interviews. They come up with the questions. They then rank them where they think they should fall, which I think is great. I don't want to have no bias in it. So we did complete that part. So we have an entry list for that. Or we have an entry list and a lateral, because by law, we have to have both. So we have those, and then we're also in the process of doing a sergeant promotion exam. Study books have come in. They have to be given 60 days to study it. So we have that scheduled out in August. I think we have 4 or 5 members that are interested in taking the exam to see how they do. And it's not an easy exam, so hopefully everyone does well. But once they're done with that, they have to complete interviews with the Police and Fire Commission. That does involve me, so I can have a say, especially knowing that the officers know the local ordinances and that. And then they'll get ranked, and then the spots will get filled as the spots are open.
Okay. No comments or questions? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Anything to remove from the consent agenda? Kim?
Yes, I'd like to remove 5C.
Okay. I'll accept a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 5C.
Motion?
Moved by Kim, second by Therese. Roll call.
Trustee Muir?
Aye.
Trustee Hassenberger?
Aye.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Okay. 5C, Kim?
Okay, I just removed it for the proclamation, just so it can be read. So everybody knows I'm going to read this in style as if it's a radio call, because it happens to be amateur radio. So, and it's going to be presented to our local club, okay? And I guess it's going to be presented to my husband, because I don't see the other member here. So, anyway, all right, here we go. W9CEQ, KC9EIF. Proclamation number 25-0605, Amateur Ham Radio Field Day Proclamation. Whereas, amateur radio operators are celebrating over a century of the miracle of the human voice broadcast over the airwaves. And whereas amateur radio has continued to provide a bridge between peoples, societies, and countries by creating friendships and the sharing of ideas, and whereas amateur radio operators have also provided countless hours of community services, both in emergencies and to other local organizations throughout the decades. And whereas these amateur radio services are provided wholly uncompensated, and whereas the state also recognizes the services amateur radio operators also provide to our many emergency response organizations. And whereas these same individuals have further demonstrated their value in public assistance by providing free radio communications for local parades, bike-a-thons, walk-a-thons, fairs, and other charitable public events. And whereas the Village of Campton Hills, Illinois, recognizes and appreciates the diligence of these hams who have served as weather spotters in the Skywarn program of the National Weather Service. And whereas the ARRL, the National Association of Amateur Radio in the USA, and whereas the American Radio Relay League Amateur Radio Field Day exercise will take place on June 28th through the 29th, 2025, and is a 24-hour emergency preparedness exercise and demonstration of the radio amateur skills and readiness to provide self-supporting communication without further infrastructure being required. Now therefore, be it proclaimed, the President and the Village Board do hereby officially recognize and designate June 22nd through the 28th as Amateur Radio Week in the Village of Campton Hills, Illinois. As a PSA on that, the field day exercises will be taking place at Mooseheart this year. They'll be there on the 28th and the 29th. I encourage people to come out and get on the air. You can do this without having a ham radio license. So, hope to see you there. I'm going to be there. So, KC9 EIF 73. And also I want to present, I have the village president present the proclamation to NF9D Bill Muir.
Okay, right now? All right.
Do you want to make the motion, trustee Muir?
That's right. Get through that mouthful. I make a motion to approve 5C proclamation 250605.
And a
Second.
Second by Mike. Okay, roll call.
Trustee Muir?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Brewson?
Aye.
Trustee Hoppensberger?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. All right, moving on to 6, action items. Motion to approve Resolution 25-21, authorizing execution of an employee leasing agreement with MGT Impact Solutions, LLC, for Building and Zoning Officer James Brown. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Janet, second. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kim. Discussion? Questions? Yeah. Mark, do you want to take it first, or? Yeah.
If there's a question, I'll answer it directly, but we've had this service with MGT for the building and zoning officer. It would continue this term, and there's about a $5 rate increase. Seems like every time we hit this, they do move up $5 or $10 per hour. And I want to talk in executive session about some personnel actions to keep this at 1 day a week and hire somebody at significantly a third of that cost to do some code enforcement for 8 to 10 hours. But I wanted to discuss that with you under some personnel action to do that. But I don't plan on having him do at $100 an hour cost to go take pictures and then write up the report. We can hire somebody else at far less bring that to him, and he'll still perform the zoning casework for adjudication and the planning and zoning hearing work, which is very unique and specific training, and he fulfills that role.
Okay, go ahead, Janet.
Anyone who's worked with Building and Zoning Officer James Brown knows that he's a great guy. And he works very hard, I think beyond what we pay him for, to do the best that he can for the village of Campton Hills. I think he gets our residents in a way that no one else that I'm aware of that has ever held this role gets. So I'm a big fan of Jim Brown. I am not a fan of MGT Impact Solutions at all. They provide no value. If you were looking to hire someone new, then you might go to a company like this, pay the freight for some period of time, or pay the fee, whatever it is, for the person as a staffing company. But this guy's been with us for a long time, and we are still paying this company that provides no value. And it's not Jim Brown's fault. Again, Jim Brown is a great guy. Unfortunately, Jim Brown works for MGT Impact Solutions. And I think that is the problem that Administrator Rooney is trying to address. It's not about Jim Brown at all. It's about this employment relationship that unfortunately we're stuck with. So I motioned for it, and I will vote to approve this because I want to keep Jim Brown. But these continued rate increases from MGT for a company that, again, offers no value, it's just not acceptable for us to do this for anything more than a token amount of time.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, ready for roll call?
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Muir?
Aye.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Hassenberger?
Aye.
Trustee Millet?
All right.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to 7, discussion items. A Village Code Committee discussion. I'd like to start it out with just a few words that I'd like to say to our volunteers, and I'm very, very glad that John Olson is here this evening from our Finance Committee. This is a quote by Elizabeth Andrew, who's an author and teacher. Volunteers do not necessarily have the time, they have the heart. Our volunteers are exceptionally dedicated at donating their time and talent to our village. I have 100% trust in all of our volunteers, and I thank each and every one of them for their time and talent and commitment. Lastly, just to say to our volunteers, keep up the good work, and thank you. And please pass that along, John. Okay. All right, Finance Committee?
I'll just make a comment. As far as committees go, I attended the newly elected official meeting, our training this past Saturday, and I could tell you there were a number of villages that, in my opinion, are run very efficiently, and they have committees where trustees are participants. And, you know, from my perspective, I don't need to lead a committee, which a lot of municipalities allow the trustees to lead committees. A lot of them allow to vote on committees. I don't need to do either one of those. My desire is to participate because I think I can bring value as an individual. Based on how we're compensated, I consider myself a volunteer as well. You know, and if the overall goal is to do things that are best for the village and to accomplish things that are best for the village, I think it's important that everybody who has some expertise in a given field to participate, whether it's a volunteer coming off the street or whether it's a trustee or anyone else. That's how I'm looking at this. I don't need a vote. I don't need to lead the committee, but I'd like to have a say and participate. And John, I think, knows the one meeting, the one finance meeting I attended prior to getting elected. We sat there for 40 minutes waiting for a quorum because there was no quorum. And we kind of bantered ideas back and forth. And, you know, John, I don't want to pick on you, but I think you said, hey, those are some good ideas and, you know, we should do it. And one of the ideas was to have a longer term vision of the finances versus an annual vision, right? So to me, it's just a way for us to all work together for a common goal, which is the improvement of the village. And it's also to kind of, you know, have a good understanding. I mean, the last thing I want to do as a trustee, and I think any of us want to do, is to have a committee spend months and months making a recommendation, and then we get the agenda on a Friday or maybe even a Monday, you know, right before a meeting, and we're trying to do 3 months worth of research, trying to figure out, you know, how the recommendation came about. So that's my thought and my idea, and that's not necessarily just for the Finance Committee, even for Public Works. I think if we're going to have a unified community and we're going to have a unified vision for the village, we all need to work together.
Okay, anybody else? Therese?
So Frank and I were at the same conference this weekend, and I got a little bit of a different feel than he did on that. I looked up the one community that you're referring to, and they kind of, every one of their committees is manned by 3 trustees. So they have made that their practice, I guess, for everything except for their Planning and Zoning Commission. And I think as a village, we've taken a different approach, and we've taken the approach that we want our citizens to give us advice and to also have citizens who have incredible backgrounds. I was doing a little bit of research on our existing Finance Committee, and there's some amazing people on that committee. I do have some background, but I think I'll hold on to that for now. But my concern is, so the one, you know, I guess the one village or the community that you and I were speaking to at the meeting, they have completely eliminated public comments and public participation in their committees with the exception of their planning and zoning. And so I don't think we should use them as an example of the way we want to run our committees. I'm also very concerned that, first of all, I still firmly believe that I don't think the municipal code allows us to to have us appoint ourselves onto these committees. So that process doesn't work. So the only process that might work is if President Winicki wanted to do that as a practice. I don't know that she does. So the other option would be to have a committee of just treasurers, trustees, and then we kind of then are pushing aside all of our amazing citizen volunteers and kind of now taking over their role. And I think that's just a very dangerous practice. I don't think we should do that. I think that we need their input. I think we're very lucky to have their input. There are probably people who are also working full-time and don't have the time to maybe put in the time for a trustee role, but they're happy to put in the role where they're available. I don't think that's where the problem lies anyway with some of the issues that we experienced this year with the budget. I think the issues might lie elsewhere, which I think we will talk about later. And so I think we're correcting the wrong thing. I don't think our volunteers and our committees are the problem. I don't think there's anything wrong there. And so I think that I just don't understand why we would want to interject ourselves into that.
Can I respond to that?
Well, Janet's next. And,
I'll defer to
it's
Trustee
not a
Benetti
back and
first.
So first of all, you're referring to Manuka, and Manuka has their trustees actually run the committees. And the trustees, when they come to the board, the trustees are the ones who make the motions and the seconds. I for sure never said that we should mirror ourselves against Manuka, but Alsip, Highland Park, Addison, there was a number of other villages that all had committees.
Trustees on committees.
That had trustees on committees. So that's not what I'm saying, and never once did I intimate that the committees that we have are not good or not doing what they're doing. I'm just looking to participate and add to what we already have as a very qualified group of volunteers. I'm not criticizing. I'm very appreciative of all the volunteers and what they do for the village. All I'm saying is I'd like to have the opportunity to participate and help. So, no offense, but some of the comments you made were not opinions of mine, so.
Therese, you finish, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not accusing you of anything or saying anything, negative about what you're saying, but what we talked about this last time, I think everything that you want to do, you already can do. So you can participate, you can go to the meetings, you can do public comments. We can then discuss, maybe we have, and I know we talked about this last time, maybe we have our chair people of the committees come and give us reports more frequently so that we are more involved in the process. But I don't see anything that you can't already do that you'd be doing by going on a committee, and I think the damage to the committees is greater than the advantage that you would gain by being put on the committee.
Go ahead, Janet.
It sounds as if there is a desire to keep doing something because we've always done it, not because it makes sense. Multiple assertions have been made that are just not supported. This is the second meeting in a row that there's been an assertion made that the power to appoint people to committees other than the Plan Commission is reserved to the president. Show me where in state statute it says that. It does not say that. The Finance Committee does not even exist in state statute. The Public Works Committee does not even exist in state statute. It is completely impossible for there to be a notion that this power is reserved for the president outside of the specific role for the Plan Commission and the ZBA, which is reserved. These others, it's the Wild West. We as a village can do what we want. So I'm sorry if this feels, uncountenanced or odd or revolutionary or something to some people, but it's not. And as Trustee Benetti has provided evidence on multiple occasions, this is routine. What we are trying to do here is routine in most other communities. And the notion that you already have this is also incorrect. It is a specific thing to be able to participate in debate. Public comment is not participation in debate. The gentleman who came from Norton Lakes this evening and made a very excellent public comment would probably very much like to be able to participate in debate, but he cannot, right? Now, that's just how it works. And so if I were a trustee sitting in a Public Works Committee meeting or a Finance Committee meeting, I don't get to participate in debate just because I'm a trustee. I'm merely a member of the public sitting there. So it is not true that you have whatever it is that we are supposedly asking for already. You do not, as a trustee, have that because you are not sitting on the committee with the ability to participate in debate. And so if at the end of the day, the budget is going to land in your lap as a trustee, or if at the end of the day, the road spend is going to end in your lap as a trustee, I think it is beyond reasonable for members of this board to participate in that process. So we don't end up blindsided by things that we did not participate in and that we did not have an opportunity to participate in the debate for.
Nick, you go ahead.
So the proposed amendments don't even talk about the trustees making their own appointments. I mean, I just reread through everything, but it's the village president with the advice and consent of the Board of Trustees. So we're not proposing, nobody's proposing to have the trustees appoint trustees for committees, right? Unless I'm missing something. But again, the same point that I had made last week was collaboration. Trustees going on into one of these committees with the president's appointment. The idea would be a single member on a committee. Our vote wouldn't be worth any more than anybody else's. So this idea that we would be steamrolling these committees, or intimidating folks on these committees, these volunteers, I just feel like that's that's fabricated. Like, where is that coming from? You know, I mean, if anybody were at this table, whatever their role was outside, sitting right here, we're all equals. I mean, on a committee, we're all equals, whoever that person would be. You know, Ms. Hoffensberger, your background in law, you know, you bring potentially lots of great legal things to the table. That doesn't mean that I'm going to get steamrolled because of legal points that you make. You know, I'm still sitting here at the table with my layman's ideas on law, and I'll debate equally at this table because we're equals. So I don't see how the president appointing a trustee to a committee somehow affects anybody's, you know, what is the idea that what is the idea, I guess, is what is the concern, what is the fear? A trustee's on a committee and we won't have volunteers, that volunteers are going to leave because a trustee is on a committee? I see it as a really valuable asset on all the committees. You know, we bring such a well-rounded perspective of the village into these committees of volunteers who are really only involved with the village for finance or public works meetings. I mean, we are, you know, very, very involved in all aspects of the village, and having a trustee involved in the debate and bringing those ideas into the committees, I mean, would really improve efficiency. I mean, just like Trustee Benetti said, I mean, we get, you know, a recommendation a week prior, and we have to kind of go through, you know, several months of a committee's work. Potentially, we could really streamline that whole process. And, you know, when we do tear apart their work, they would probably be really appreciative. How often do you think those folks are at home and just been like, man, if a trustee would have just been on this committee with me and we would have known X, Y, and Z, we would have done things differently. I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm sure that myself, in hindsight, if I were on one of those committees, that may be something that crossed my mind several times. I just don't see the negative.
I think Mike was next. No, not ready. No? Therese, let me go. You go next.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we may just have to disagree on this because when you said that, you know, when we can all debate here, we're all trustees, so we're all at the same level, so of course we can debate. And when Janet said that we can't debate, you know, we debate every meeting here with each other, and we can take the information that we get from our committees, the advisory information, and then we get to sit and debate all day long about whether or not we want to accept their recommendations or not. So saying that we don't have the option to debate is ridiculous. But to interject ourselves into that process, and I think, sure, maybe it works in other communities. Maybe, you know, there's communities that don't have volunteers. We have some great volunteers, and we have, from what I have understood, this is not information that I have personally, but what I've heard is that there are some committee members who are not very happy about this potential change in the way committees are run. So yes, I do think that we will lose some, and I don't think that's just speculation. I think that's truth. I think there are people who have expressed that. And so to say that you're going to be just average Joe when you're on the committee, when you're a trustee, I just don't think you can always make that clear. You're saying that you're going to go onto a committee and don't mind the fact that I'm a trustee and I'm going to make a decision on this next week. I just don't think you can walk that line as easily as you think you can. So I think we have a system that's not broken. Our committees aren't not working, they're working. What's not working is probably something else. And one of those things might just be, I think we need to have the committee members, maybe the chair people come in and talk to us more frequently. So, because I don't really even know many of the committee members yet. So maybe we get them to come in and we talk to them, and maybe we, you know, if we want to continue with the liaison program, I think that would be fine. But that liaison also needs to know, you're a liaison, you're not a committee member. I think we do run the risk, though, and I think maybe you don't think so, but I from what I've heard, it's very different, that we do run the risk of some of our excellent, extremely talented committee members leaving, because why, if they put one of us on there, What is their point? Why do we need them as an advisory board? We've asked them to review things, give us recommendations, and then we debate. Then we sit in here all as an equal participants debating. And we talk it through, and we either say we accept their recommendation or we don't, and these are the reasons. I think it's short-sighted to think that our participation would not change the dynamic of those meetings. I think it would very much change the dynamic of those meetings.
Mike hasn't spoke yet. You're still listening? Go ahead, Frank.
Okay, I thought at the last meeting, we discussed having all the committee chairs come to this meeting, so we can have a discussion with them. And I think John's the only one here. So I'm not 100% sure what happened with that. But there's, to respond to your point, there's a significant number of other municipalities that have trustees as committee members, and I can't emphasize that enough. It's at least 25 that I looked up, plus the ones from Saturday, and I just haven't had the time to look up more. But the other benefit I think we bring is if we see what the direction needs to be, obviously at this point, Administrator Rooney and Madam President probably has some say in giving direction, but I think it's important that there is direction on those committees. I think the Public Works Committee, or I'm not sure if it was Public Works or Planning and Zoning, had a huge turnover recently of people. I'm not really 100% sure of what happened there. The Finance Committee sat for 40 minutes, at least at the one meeting. My understanding is a number of their meetings have been canceled over time, and I don't know if that's because of people not showing up or if our treasurer canceled the meetings or whatever happened. So to publicly make the comment that it's necessarily working, I don't know, because I'm too new to know. But from the outside looking in, based on one committee having massive turnover, and the other one maybe not having a quorum and not meeting on a regular basis for whatever reasons, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's the right thing to do, or if to say that it's working. Because something happened to turn over an entire committee or the majority of a committee. So, couple points. If it was that bad, so many municipalities wouldn't be already doing it. And again, I'm just going to reemphasize this point. I don't want control over it. I don't want to necessarily have to vote. I just want to contribute. And my understanding is the way it's set up today is we're not allowed to contribute other than make public comment. So.
Kim? Kim, yeah, it's your turn.
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody read our current amendments to our ordinance with the Chapter 4 of Section 2-4-1 through whatever. Back in the ordinance to amend this was done, where is it? The change here, in and around 6/19/28, and it was ordinance -18-09, the original one, and it looks like it actually was amended. And it was amended to actually have a member of the Board of Trustees, up to one, to be part of that 5-member committee, with the village board president serving as the liaison who would not be counted as the quorum or have a vote. So I know it used to be that way with former trustee O'Dwyer. He was always at those meetings and participated. I watched it, was present as a member of the public, obviously, but it's a slippery slope. If we can come with some sort of something in between, I'd say, yeah. I'm not so sure. I still think trustee being on that board or on those committees still might be a little bit of an intimidation factor. I agree that sometimes you need direction. Finance is definitely important, no matter how you slice it, because we have to have a budget. We want to make sure it's going the right direction. Is there some kind of compromise that we can come up where that, even if the trustees rotated out on a meeting, especially during budget time, when we're going through it? And I don't know what that looks like, because I really haven't had a time to look at. My pros and cons have 4 of each, so I mean, it's 50-50. So we have to come to some kind of agreement, and I still think we need to talk to all of the chairs. And there's some of them that, like, community relations, we don't touch.
Right.
Chief and the police department have that in hand, and they do an excellent job. Public Works, responsible for spending quite a bit of the rest of our bigger dollar amounts that we're gonna put out, but I'm not so sure that committee needs to be more than advisory anyway, because it's handled by our pseudo village engineer, who comes up with all those figures. And half the time, Public Works currently right now only meets quarterly. Half the time, we're getting reports from our village engineer after it's been presented to the board anyway. So when I was serving on that committee, it kind of used to frost me a little bit, that why didn't I hear about this before? But I did hear about it because I was here. So when I would go in those meetings, I knew what he was saying. But, the rest of the committee wasn't showing up at the board meetings where those were presented. So I'm gonna be like this right now, but I just wanted to bring up that was amended.
Go ahead, Nick, and line
Make this
this
a
up pretty
shorter-
soon. Mike after.
Shorter comment. I just want to point out kind of the obvious, but this is giving the president the ability to appoint a trustee to the committee, which would then be brought to the Board of Trustees to review and consent to. So, I mean, there's still checks and balances built into the way this is written. This isn't saying that we're going to have trustees on all the committees. Additionally, we all have lots of roles. I mean, when I leave here, I have a different role. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to have another role. When I get home, I'm going to have another role. And every single time I do that, I can turn off the Nick Boatner's a trustee switch. When I sit down, if I were appointed, so lucky to be appointed to one of these committees, and I was a good fit, I could easily turn off the trustee switch and be a member of that committee. The only negative that I'm really hearing about this is this intimidation of other members of the committee. I just don't hear another negative about this. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of positives. And the last thing I would want to do is support something that would intimidate our volunteers or our super valuable committee members. I truly don't believe that that's actually the case. I think by the time you get here and your character gets you to sitting at the table and you're a trustee, that you will certainly have, the character to turn off that trustee switch if you were sitting with committee members and be very respectful of everybody on that committee as an equal. So I'm just not buying into the intimidation argument.
Okay, one last comment, and Mike, you were.
Okay,
You were
so
next,
my
and
first question was, what's in the packet is the current language?
Yeah.
So you already have this ability. We're done. No, I mean, that's only joking. So the current language says one of the finance committee can be a trustee, maybe. The finance committee shall consist of 5 members, not more than one of whom may be a member of the Board of Trustees. Term of office, et cetera, et cetera. Vice president then serving in office, the village president then serving in office, I guess that's important to clarify, anyway, will serve as liaison to the committee. Liaison will not count towards the quorum of the committee, not a voting member. Excuse me. So I've been thinking about this since our last meeting, and I was talking to my boss and our assistant manager, because we talked about crazy things like what I do in my free time. And why we've never had these in South Elgin this way. And I think my employer's lifespan is a bit more similar to our lifespan, smallish town, grew up kind of very small, was kind of wandering in the shadow of its big brother for many, many years. And so they took all the help they could get. They relied on, for a while, the Parks Committee was actually the Little League because nobody else would take care of the parks, right? So when I went and explained a little bit what we're talking about, and they said, well, to the point of my boss on one point, it's like, why, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I said, well, there's some concerns we've had. And he said, well, you can address those other ways than changing the committee. And this was me not remembering that this language was already here, by the way. And our assistant manager, she had a different take on things because she grew up in Downers Grove. And was more familiar with when it was still a commission form of government. Downers Grove came out of that in the 70s. And there was different because you were elected to be the police commissioner. You were elected to be the water commissioner, et cetera, et cetera. So the point I'm returning to is, what do we want this committee to do? Is it a subcommittee of us? Like some towns do. Some towns do that. You as trustees are assigned to a committee as a trustee. That is the committee because, again, it's a subcommittee of the board. If that's what the deal is, we could do that right now. That's cool. That may work. The part of getting advice from the village writ large and to engage more people than just those of us who are up here can be a struggle for sure. And that's was the vision we had with getting the volunteer committees. We always generally would call them volunteer committees. And we've ebbed and flowed on what was useful at the time, what overwent its charge and that sort of thing. So we don't have an economic development committee anymore, that sort of thing. So as part of coming up with whether we like this language, whether we want to add similar language to the Public Works Committee, I think we need to go back to what are we trying to do with this committee? And I don't think we're going to make that decision tonight. We don't have to. It's just for discussion. But I'm thinking what might be valid is if we have a couple of us take on this as a task and then report back to the rest of the body. And then with the research of this many towns do it this way, this many towns do it that way, and here's why these towns do it, or here's the pros and cons, and talking to the chairs of the committee, because to a couple points that have been made, I'm going to say I've been contacted by 3 people, I won't say which committees, that would leave. They've told me that by calling me to tell me that. So that is a real thing. But if we work through this and engage them, maybe they would understand what's going on and they wouldn't leave. But by just doing it, that's just poke, 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 and I don't think that's going to be a great result for any of us. So I'm suggesting a subcommittee of 2 of us. I don't want to be on it because I'm stuck with the thinking of the old way and not wanting it. I'm thinking maybe a newer trustee and Nick is an old trustee and Teresa's a new trustee, or Frank is whatever. It would be the president's suggestion, but I think that's the way it would make sense to split it. And then that way, I'm suggesting 2 because then you wouldn't have to worry about Open Meetings Act. Or maybe you do it that way. We same thing. Advising about a trustee person said it would be our decision, not the president's. Same concept. You would say, I suggest these people. Everybody yes or no, and then do it that way. And then have a report out date so that they have I know it's summer coming up, but I mean, we need to get into finance by October. Does that sound right? Really start October, November, August? You want to do it by August? Well, could you hold October, maybe September? And then get a little bit more time to get a bit more research done and maybe come up with something. There might be something we haven't even thought about here that we're so focused on that A or B here. So I don't know if there's a C, D, and F. So that'd be my suggestion.
Yeah, one more comment.
One more comment, and
Okay, so
we'll move on.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I really would like to have a meeting with the chairs of the committees. I think that would be very important, at least the key committees that we're talking about. And just so they hear from us exactly what we're trying to do, to your point, and the research is needed. But to me, I guess being elected, our role is to serve and represent the residents, right? And I'll use Norton Lakes as an example because they have a representative here tonight. We don't have a horse in that race. Supposedly Shodine doesn't have a horse in that race. But the idea is we're here to serve and represent our residents, and they're our residents. And if we can help create a solution that helps everybody, and whether that's involved with the committees or whatever's going on in the community, if we're doing what we were elected to do, and that's serve and represent the residents, that even though it might be outside our scope a little bit, we need to participate and we need to try to help. And whether that's a committee, whether that's the situation Norton Lakes is having right now or whatever, I think we have an obligation to the people of this community to help and to give ideas. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, no more on Public Works, and we'll move on. All right, 8 additional comments from the president, trustees, and village attorney. Anything? Okay, closed session. We are in need of a closed session for appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees or contractors. Litigation that is filed and pending or is probable or imminent.
So moved.
It's moved by Mike, second.
Second?
Second by Janet. Roll call.
Trustee Millet?
Aye.
Trustee Burson?
Aye.
Trustee Benetti?
Aye.
Trustee Boatner?
Aye.
Trustee Hafstenberger?
Aye.
Trustee Muir?
Aye.
Yeah, and we'll make no decisions after closed session, so we'll call it